And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here on BlazeTV radio and podcast, live and on demand. But let's be honest, not all that much in demand. So we're just here until the Blaze finds somebody who is. I am Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzin, and he is Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our good friends over at First Cup Coffee. If you want a freedom for every flavor-loving American and every patriotic American made by patriots just like you, then First Cup is your coffee company just for you. Get 10% off when you go to firstcup.com if you use the promo code DEACE. 10% off at firstcup.com. Use the promo code DEACE. And if you subscribe, you'll get an additional 10% off with the life of your subscription as well at firstcup.com, promo code DEACE. Coming up on today's show, we are going to be joined by our old friend, Corey DeAngelis. He's got a new book out. We'll talk to him about that a little bit later on. Had a chance to watch a movie last week about what's being done to some of the January 6th, I don't even know what to call them now, detainees, the persecuted, the guy who produced this film and conducts the interviews in it as well. Nick Searcy is going to join us. This is a movie that you need to see. It is very compelling. It is also very infuriating. And so we'll talk about that next hour. And then for Idolatry or Not, we're going to quote for you the great prophet, Flavor Flav. Can't trust it. All right? Because you are currently being led to slumber. The new psyop is just stay home. Keep watching that Fox News shilling. Look at the polls! Don't build any form of a turnout operation. Don't raise any money. Don't do any of the hard work it actually takes to win elections. Don't do that. Trust us. We're the New York Times. And we're here to tell you you're winning. Now, if that sounds just, dumb to say out loud, that is exactly what is going on, I believe, and I will explain it to you with Idolatry or Not later in the show. But I want to begin, actually, before we go to Aaron's montage. I received this note yesterday, and this is something I think all of us need to be aware of and alerted to. Dear Steve, I should have sent this to you months ago. However, given what is transpiring today and tomorrow, along with your Idolatry or Not segment last week, as well as the current pro-life situation in America that you are speaking about, I feel compelled to send it now, regardless of the shortness of the hour. In short, my father is facing 11 years in prison for refusing to leave the waiting room of abortionist Cesar Santangelo, the Kermit Gosnell of Washington, D.C. My father and the other 9 defendants will be sentenced today and Wednesday in a Washington, D.C. court by Judge Colleen Collar-Cotelli. Perhaps we may speak more after the sentencing, but for now, I ask that you and your listeners please pray for my father and co-defendants, but most importantly for the unborn. Thank you for all the passion and defense of the unborn, John Paul. So, I wanted to send this along at the start of the program. If you have time today to say a prayer for those who are joining a grand tradition, a proud tradition. In fact, it's a rare list it's a shorter list for sure, of great Christian leaders and heroes of the faith from the dawn of the gospel itself, who were not at some point in time behind bars or under some form of house arrest. So these 11 are joining a large cloud of witnesses. But that doesn't mean they don't need encouragement. That doesn't mean they don't need favor, protection. I'm sure the enemy would love nothing more than to get him inside the wall, get these people inside the walls of his dens of iniquities there, these prisons, and see what may happen to them. So if you have a moment today, if you are a pastor and you could lead your congregation this Sunday in prayer for them and for all of us to show the same kind of strength and integrity that these 11 have shown when it's our hour, when it's our time for choosing, when the fight comes to our front door, when we have finally decided we've had enough and someone needs to do something about this. That would be very much appreciated. And I think all of us, to some varying degree, ought to have more than a modicum of admiration for the courage of conviction of these 11, and may their house increase. You gentlemen want to say anything before we move on this matter?
Just when you were walking in, there was a break about 45 minutes ago. One of them, Lauren Handy, 57 months in prison. 57 months. 5 years. Almost. For saying babies should not be murdered.
For protesting murder. Yes.
Yeah.
But you're right, guys. We're gonna set this issue aside and we're gonna fix everything else. This only confirms, Aaron, what we talked about yesterday. This is ground zero of the moral and spiritual battle between heaven and hell on this planet, is this issue, and it always has been.
And it always will be until Jesus returns. And you can look at the people who are perpetrating this, the administration in tandem with the Department of Justice. And there is some degree of evil meets incompetence, a little bit of both, anti-humanism mixed with just blind political rage, whatever it is. And you can poke fun at the incompetence. You can poke fun at the adults are in charge. I'm going to do that here in just a little bit with the montage. We can do that all we want to, but at the end of the day, whether it's some degree of incompetence, whether it's some degree of stupidity, whether it's some degree of evil, whether it's some degree of anti-humanism, it doesn't matter. It's the end result. People are declaring war on God. And they have been for quite some time. That's really what this is all about. You look at Bleep Lord Nefarious says any given week, it's just full of people who have decided to stick their middle fingers up at God Almighty and say, come at me. And in turn, they're doing that at everybody else who bears the Imago Dei. People who are trying to defend those innocent unborn babies who also bear the Imago Dei. Fundamentally, our opponents are people, not who have the declared political ideology, not liberalism, not Marxism, at the end of the day. Although what Marxism is a war on God. It's not any of the isms, that's not the point. It's fundamentally, foundationally, people who have declared war on God Almighty. That's who we're up against right now. That is what the spirit of the age is.
And just remember, normie Christian who thinks, well, they'll leave you alone if you just don't poke the bear. This is going on. This sentencing is going on at the same time as we have the Palestinian protests a couple years after the double standard with BLM and setting aside all the COVID stuff so they could burn it down. If your excuse is cowardly on its face, even if those things aren't going on. But the fact that they are going on means that your excuse is not going to last. You're lying to yourself. And they will round you up one way or the other, or they will force you to simply bend the knee in any way that they want to. So it's time to ask yourself, Dr. Jones, what do you really believe?
Yeah, the darkness thinks it has the advantage, so it's going to seek out the fight now. So this idea that, if I'm just John Piper kvetching over whether or not sipping your coffee in church is irreverent, and if I and that is my content, other than drag queen story hour, soul murdering children across the street. No, they're coming for you, just the same. You will not run from this fight because evil wants it now. They're begging it now. Always has, by the way. It was just waiting until it thought it had the advantage. And to let you believe you were sitting in your hermetically sealed Pottery Barn, vaporized church for long enough, just until you were anesthetized and comfy and cozy, and it had the advantage that it wanted. It now has the advantage that it wants, and so something wicked this way comes.
The enemy is definitely pro-choice. Just not in that context that you typically hear it in. They're going to come for you first. They really will. They will give you a choice, Lord or me.
Every time. And with that, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away brought to you by Who Could Have Seen This Coming? A bombshell dropped yesterday when it was revealed Vice President Kamala Harris has hired a high-tech PR agency to help improve her public image. Furthermore, it was revealed the vice president wears an earpiece to all her public appearances and gets live, real-time coaching from her PR team. One of those instances was leaked yesterday when Harris was speaking to a conference of the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. Listen to this.
Don't ever carry as a personal burden.
Okay, Kamala, can you hear me? Okay, good.
Your capacity to do whatever you dream and aspire to do based on other people's limited ability to see who can do what.
We need to make you sound more relatable here. Talk about busting down barriers.
This is part of what's involved, is that we have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't.
Oh, that's good. Now drop an F-bomb. Drop an F-bomb.
And then you need to kick that door down.
Great job, Mamala. Now cackle.
Excuse my language.
Oh, yeah. Asians love this.
Joe Biden, your thoughts?
My name's Joe Biden. I work for Kamala Harris. I asked her to be my vice president, but I knew I needed somebody smarter than me.
Meanwhile, in Florida, where things seem to make more sense, Governor Ron DeSantis has signed an anti-human trafficking bill into law, part of which raises the age young women can legally strip from 18 to 21 years old. That's basically a torpedo for all establishments which engage in such seedy acts. That's a good thing. DeSantis took the opportunity at a press conference introducing the law to rip on congressional Republicans for doing nothing about Biden's open borders and how that aids and abets human trafficking.
If the president and an administration is behaving in a way that violates the law or Constitution, the appropriate remedy is to have the House of Representatives stop funding the constitutional abuses. And yet, the Republican-controlled House joined with Schumer to write Biden a blank check on all his border policies. And so, look, we worked hard in the midterm. We added 4 new Republicans to the U.S. House delegation. The reality is that is being funded by the Republican House of Representatives.
Checking in on the upside downs Wakanda, here's the World Economic Forum's Yuval Noah Harari last week explaining why it's so important Russia loses the conflict in Ukraine.
Basically, if Russia is allowed to win, that's the end of the global order, as we have known it for decades. The most fundamental rule was that you cannot just invade and conquer and annex another country, neighboring country, just because you're stronger.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is global order. You keep using that phrase. I think it means exactly what you think it means.
全球秩序，你一直用这句话。我认为这正是你所认为的意思。
And now an upsetting but unsurprising story from the Palmetto State. You've probably heard a bit about the South Carolina Freedom Caucus. Unlike various members of their U.S. congressional delegation, these people are legit. They played a great role in shaping policies in South Carolina, like the heartbeat bill passed last year, and the bill you just heard about on the montage earlier this week, which bans meatball surgery for minors in the name of gender. But being that they're actually standing on the wall for something, they've been met with opposition, but not just from the left. According to the South Carolina Freedom Caucus's Substack page, a group called the Palmetto Truth Project was established in March of last year. This group was formed after it was becoming apparent the Freedom Caucus wasn't just going to roll over for the establishment. It was actually fighting for their constituents' agenda. The Palmetto Truth Project served as basically the South Carolina version of the Lincoln Project, harassing and spreading all sorts of lies about Freedom Caucus members. Well, now we know, thanks to Fitz News and further reported by the South Carolina Freedom Caucus, that the senior advisor to the South Carolina House GOP caucus and a consultant for many of its members, Walter Wetzel, has admitted he is in fact helping Palmetto Truth Project. To make matters worse, of course, federal ethics laws prohibit any form of coordination between campaigns and political action committees like the Palmetto Truth Project. So now the South Carolina Freedom Caucus is demanding that Speaker Merle Smith and Majority Leader Davey Hyatt condemn the actions of Walter Wetzel, his company Starboard Communications, and Palmetto Truth Project, and call for a halt to all operations in the state of South Carolina. And finally, three-time Super Bowl winning kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs and devout Catholic Harrison Butker spoke recently at the commencement ceremonies for Benedictine College and proceeded to drop bombs.
Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. These are the sorts of things we are told in polite society to not bring up. You know, the difficult and unpleasant things. But if we are going to be men and women for this time in history, we need to stop pretending that the Church of Nice is a winning proposition. We must always speak and act in charity, but never mistake charity for cowardice. It is safe to say that over the past few years, I've gained quite the reputation for speaking my mind. I never envisioned myself nor wanted to have this sort of a platform, but God has given it to me, so I have no other choice but to embrace it and preach more hard truths about accepting your lane and staying in it.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. You know, while we're just saying things out loud that just sound dumb when you say them, let's do another one, shall we?
Sure.
Should you maybe put the entirety of all your healthcare decisions in the hands of people who think that castrating boys with the same chemicals we give to pedophiles is a good idea? Sounds dumb when you say it out loud.
It does.
It does. And yet, how many of us are doing exactly that?
Most.
This is now, again, we cannot completely exempt ourselves, you know? I mean, even Todd will go see a doctor once a decade. Okay, so eventually something comes up that we cannot, operate on ourselves. So we cannot completely exempt ourselves. But as much as we possibly can, let's do so. And one way you can is with our friends at Jace Medical. Get the Jace case with outstanding award-winning medications like amoxicillin, doxycycline, and others. Who knows? They could be the next ones on the hit list the next time we have an emergency. And these now suddenly, after we just gave them awards and talked about how many lives they've saved for decades, are now suddenly too dangerous. You can also expand your Jace case with customizable options. They've got an increasing menu of drugs available. So if you want to make sure the stuff that you need that maybe isn't in the original Jace case, you can get backups of those too. This is especially handy, guys and gals, for if you've got loved ones who are on Medicare or Medicaid, so they're completely wards of the state. Particularly if you've got elderly family members, you can look after them to make sure they have the backups of what they need. Just a lot of peace of mind here you can't put a price tag on. Go to jacemedical.com to take advantage of it. JASE, jacemedical.com is where you want to go. Use the discount code DACE there for the discount at checkout. Discount code DACE at checkout at Jace Medical, JASE, jacemedical.com. Let's go to a couple of items towards the end of Aaron's montage, if we could. And this story out of South Carolina, I know this is a distraction. I did something dumb and cut myself in a spot where I couldn't figure out how to get a Band-Aid on it, so I just had to wrap my entire finger. Forgive me, I'll try to hide it. Okay. But this story out of South Carolina is very common. In fact, this wasn't even the only such story like this yesterday. Yesterday, the Ohio Speaker of the House would not permit a vote on a bill that would ban foreign funding of elections in the state of Ohio. Now, this is a state that is as Republican right now as it has ever been, like in its history. When we were growing up, Todd, Ohio was the bellwether state to determine who won, like every presidential election. Something like no one since Garfield has ever won Ohio and lost the presidential election, right?
Right.
Until 2020. It's funny. That 2020 election, we keep coming back to that. You notice that? Where Joe Biden, I think, won one of the 15 or 16 bellwether counties. Huh. And actually, all the historical trends were in Trump's favor. And yet somehow Joe Biden managed to win by less than 40,000 votes by getting just enough mail-in ballots that just so happen to all come in to cities and communities where Democrats have complete control of the election machinery.
That's Wuhan luck for you, Steve.
It is, man. It is some Wuhan luck. No doubt about it. But I digress. All right? No, I don't. It is a hell of a thing, isn't it? Okay. Steve, what's your evidence the election was stolen? I just gave it to you. Anyway, this is not unique. It's just not. This exists in virtually every red state in America. Remember when coming off of COVID, Kristi Noem she was like, stood up to the Trump administration she's been auditioning for 5 years, okay? Over COVID, right? Didn't do all the stuff that Fauci and Trump said to do, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then turned around and caved on trannies. Do you remember this?
Of course.
And we were sitting here that day like, how does that math work? All right. I was good on the hardest fight of the era, okay? But like on the easiest call of all, and I happen to be a woman myself, I'm just assuming the position here. How we were just befuddled by that, right?
Yes.
And then we found out one of her biggest donors was, somebody involved in the medical community who wants this kind of revenue. And another donor is concerned that the NCAA and other people won't bring sporting events there anymore if they ban these, and he'll be out of pocket, right? And so in the end, you grab your ankles for those that cut you the check, right?
Yes.
But we didn't know that information at the time.
Not instantly, no.
But then after that information was revealed, then the math worked and it made sense.
Sure.
This exists in virtually every single red state. And the only real exceptions are places where the governors have had a strong enough influence themselves so that the fear of that governor and what they could do to you overrides how much you would prefer to cheeks for your donors. For example, in our home state of Iowa, we had high-ranking members. We talked to Corey DeAngelis. He's one of the guys on the front lines of this battle here in about 15 minutes, right? And in our state, we had some prominent Republicans who would rather do the bidding of the National Education Association than offer school choice. And that's why you didn't get school choice for many, many years in a place like Iowa. Finally, we had a governor who went into the primaries and took these guys out and put her own people in, and then we got one of the best, if not the best, school choice program in the United States of America now, right?
Yes.
Same thing. Florida, I didn't start with Florida on purpose because that's literally the example for everything, Okay. And so I'm trying to, there are other examples. There are a few. But if the governor is not a strong figure, Brian Kemp is kind of 100%, like 70% of the time, and then the other 30%, you're just like, what? Why are you in Davos right now? I mean, is that a fair description of Brian Kemp? Like he's 100%, like 70% of the time, and then like the other third of the time, you're like, what you doing? Right? Is that fair?
That's good.
All right, but
You had me at Davos.
But I can promise you the amount of people in the Georgia state legislature, when I say people, I'm just talking Republicans. I don't even pay attention to what Democrats do on most. Why? Well, number one, it's biblical to hold yourself, your own people, your own house, your own tribe accountable first. Don't care about the speck of dust in your brother's when you got a beam in your own. Judgment begins in the house of God. All right, so that's, integrity is measured inside out. It's what goes into your mouth, not what comes out. So I know that the worldly standard is to hold people I have no influence over accountable all the time and make millions of dollars doing that. The problem is it won't have actually any impact, and all I'll do is make millions of dollars doing that. And I'd like to have more of an impact than just making millions of dollars, preferably. I'd like to actually have impact and make millions of dollars. That would be my best case scenario. But if I've got to settle with making a few $100,000 and having an impact, I'll choose that. Okay. So I have much more of an impact going and holding people wearing my jersey accountable. So it's not just biblical, it's also tactical. So if you look at Georgia, I promise you there were Republicans in the legislature there freaking out when Michael Eisner, remember, Michael Eisner was not going to save Disney from the political the politicization of the company. He started it. It started with him. He declared war on Georgia for their heartbeat bill. You remember this at the time? Yeah. And said they were going to move all their productions out of Georgia, which is all the Star Wars and Marvel and everything else. And Brian Kemp essentially went full Dirty Harry. Go ahead, make my day. I'll call your bluff. You can see if you've got someone with better studios and better tax credits than we do. I think you're tripping. I don't think you've got the balls to do that. And Brian Kemp ended up being correct about that. Because Disney has been producing the schlock that it's been making the last few years in Georgia, nevertheless. All right? But I promise you there were Georgia Republicans burning up his phone lines. We're going to lose all this money, all this business development. And I've got this donor and this client who relies on them being here for this, that, and that. And my biggest donor is the supplier of their stage materials for their sets. And if they leave, he's out millions and billions. See, this is why we never advance on these issues. What Dana White did with Bud White is what the Republican Party has done up against all of these various influences all of your lifetimes. In the end, always takes the check every time. Every single time. And this is why there are truly no red states. We have no idea what's going to happen here in Iowa after Kim Reynolds moves on. We don't. We have no clue. Now, much like Ron DeSantis, much of what she's done has been at the statute level. It won't be easy to roll it all back. But can we just sit here and is Solomon usually followed by Rehoboam or somebody better than Solomon? How does that usually work? Usually he's followed by Rehoboam, and most of the time. All right. Usually the sequel's not better. We have no idea what Florida will look like in a couple of years when Ron DeSantis gets term limited. Again, much of what he has done has been at the statute level. It won't be easy to just with a stroke of a pen get rid of it, but there's no guarantee that this will continue on. But Iowa and Florida are not historical red states. Donald Trump won Ohio by an average of 8.5 points in the last two presidential elections. Ohio traditionally has been more Republican than Florida and Iowa, even in recent times. And that's not even counting for Mississippi, South Carolina, Alabama, where except for predominantly black neighborhoods or college towns, you can't get elected dog catcher being a Democrat in these states. So then why does nothing change? Why do Trey Gowdy's and Lindsey Graham's and Tim Scott's, why do these exist? Roger Wicker's, why? Kay Ivey's, because of stories like what Aaron just brought to you. That's why there's really no red states. What's happened is these corporate and Democrat interests have figured out we'll just take over the Republican Party. Most of them aren't smart enough anyway, and or just want to get bought off. And so they just have ours after their name. Now, a lot of you ask me all the time, what can I do? And that's where I want to get to the final thing in Aaron's montage. I have just done pretty much all I can do for the state of South Carolina. I opened up the opening of my show as a platform to unveil this and sunlight it. I just gave it more commentary, right? Okay. I spoke out against it. That's what you just saw Harrison Butker do. You know, the most powerful thing you have is your voice. Now, did I say that's the only thing you have? Is that what I said? No. No. But it is the most powerful thing you have is your voice. And every one of us has one. Even if we're deaf and mute, we can have a social media page. So we can have a written voice. It is time now for all of us to push back on this and to speak out against it. That is something we can all do. That is something that might build a critical mass. That is something that might inspire those who could be the real doers about this to come forward. But we've got to all now take Harrison Butker's lead. Whatever the platform is, Benedictine College, my own parish, my family at the table, whatever the platform is that you have, do what that guy did. Do that.
Accept your lane and stay in it.
Correct. We can all speak out. We all have a voice. I mean, if we have any problems, if we have one mate, we've got multiple problems these days. One of them is too many people are given access to a voice. Idiots, reprobates. Time for people who actually believe in some righteous things to follow Harrison Butker's lead and use their voice to speak out as well. Use your voice. Do what you saw him do. Well, American exceptionalism is under siege, unfortunately, a lot of times from the very institutions that our founders gave us to protect, defend, and preserve it. If you want to stay updated in that fight, so you can do what we just talked about at the end of the last segment, at least all of us have a voice. At least we can all speak up and speak out. But what should I be speaking up on behalf of and speaking out in opposition to? If you're looking for a great resource to that end, make sure you get a free, no-obligation subscription to Imprimis from Hillsdale College. You'll get some outstanding commentary from the likes of Victor Davis Hanson, whom we just had on the show last week, Christopher Rufo, and so many more. You'll join over 6.5 million patriots that want to make sure they get this digest of liberty from Hillsdale College. Again, it's part of the educational mission of Hillsdale to defend and preserve our freedoms and liberties for this and future generations. It's called Imprimis. You can subscribe for free today at daceforhillsdale.com, F-O-R. Use the preposition, not the number, daceforhillsdale.com. Again, head over to daceforhillsdale.com. Name of the book, The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools, out today. In fact, written by Dr., make sure we get that in there. He did the work with the PhD, so we'll recognize it. Dr. Corey A. DeAngelis. Dr. DeAngelis, welcome back to the show, brother. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Steve. I got to correct you real quick. I'm not a real doctor. I'm more like a Jill Biden doctor. So, I have a PhD in education policy, not in the medical field.
But you did earn the credentials, so we wanted to make sure to recognize those. And if you can get a PhD, then it is clear that it is capable to survive some level of indoctrination if you got to the end game with your education. Nevertheless, we don't want to subject our children to this any more than we absolutely have to. So how do we? Let's start there. How do we rescue our kids from these schools, Corey?
Well, one way is school choice, and it's already happening in 11 red states, including in Iowa. I really dedicated the book, The Parent Revolution, to Randy Weingarten and the teachers unions, the head of the AFT, for overplaying their hand and awakening a sleeping giant, which happens to be parents who want more of a say in their kids' education. Well, guess what? The unions, their plan backfired. They were holding children's education hostage. They fought to keep the schools closed as long as possible. They were fear-mongering from the beach in Puerto Rico. They were vacationing, but saying they couldn't go back to work. They were deleting tweets saying that it was racist and sexist to reopen the schools. They pulled out all the stops. But what they revealed to parents, what was happening in the classroom through Zoom school, through remote learning, which, look, we really should have just called it remotely learning. There wasn't a lot of learning going on, but families got to see, hold on a second, even parents who thought that their kids were in a great place to begin with, and maybe they saw the test scores were fine, they got an A rating from the state, they thought things were fine before, but when they got to see through that lens what was happening, they were teaching through a CRT lens, they had woke gender ideology in the classroom, inappropriate content for young children in the classroom, and parents said, to hell with this. They pushed back at school board meetings. Well, what happened first was they had their mics cut off. They were called domestic terrorists for pushing back. It was an attempt by the status quo to bully and silence parents into submission. But guess what? That didn't work. The good news is it only worked to embolden parents to push back even harder. It sparked a parent revolution. So really the point of the book is to document what happened over the past few years. Don't let Randy Weingarten rewrite history about school closures, but also to give every American a sense of hope about how parents and other interests could band together and fight for change and fight for more freedom. And if you want to take Ted Cruz's advice, Senator Ted Cruz, he wrote on the back of the book with an endorsement that says, ruin Randy Weingarten's day by reading this book. The unions aren't very happy about it.
Have you considered the irony that the right trying to get the kids back into school? I mean, I've spent most of my career trying to get these kids out of these schools, but trying to get these kids back in these schools while the teacher unions were not wanting to reopen their centers of indoctrination. Have you considered the irony that little twist of fate is the impetus here? It's the galvanizing moment that has led to this current momentum. And that's just not the way many people would have predicted that would have turned out.
Yeah, look, they just wanted more money. They got $190 billion in so-called COVID relief since March of 2020. It was a hostage-taking scenario. It's the same thing that always happens with the government schools. When they have low test scores, they say, oh, we're failing because we don't have enough money. And so they pour more and more resources. It's a definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But the unions knew they could apply that same tactic to the school closures. They were able to say, hey, we're not open because we don't have enough money, even though we're already spending $20,000 a kid in our institutions. The private schools that cost a lot less, they're open right down the street. Everything else is open, but the schools, it's not safe enough for us. And so they fear-mongered with body bags, fake ones, outside of public school offices. They had fake tombstones. They were driving around a hearse in Florida with Ron DeSantis's picture on it to say that, that people that wanted to reopen the schools were just trying to kill teachers. I mean, it was just so ridiculous how low they went with their fear mongering, but it might have been all worth it, because we have sparked a parent revolution where parents are paying attention. They're never going to unsee what they saw starting in 2020. And as Vodi Bakum once said, we cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. Well, the good news is, as I document in the book, parents are not surprised anymore. They've seen it. They won't unsee it. And the revolution will continue, and we're going to continue freeing families from the clutches of Randy Weingarten's teachers unions once and for all. And there's not a dang thing she can do about it, particularly in red states like Iowa that have gone all in on school choice to empower parents to choose schools that do align with their values, and also to provide competition for the public schools to up their game and do a better job.
Corey, let's play pretend for a second, because this is one of only two issues that in all the years I've either been active as a voter, or this is my 18th year working full-time in politics. And this is one of only two issues I can say during that time that we have demonstrably moved the country to the right from where we were either at the dawn of that particular issue fight, or the era in which I participated in the process. Guns, I think, would be the other, but there's a different dynamic there, okay? So this is the only other one I can think of. And as you see that we are consistently playing by the left's Overton window on issues comprehensively across the board, except for this one. Now, I don't want you to get out of your lane. This is your lane, but I am curious. If I was like the Heritage Foundation or somebody like that, and I brought you in for a weekend, all right, to say, hey, okay, what lessons did you learn from this issue? And what has created the rightward momentum that is happening around the country here, and how can it be emulated? Different issues produce different demographics, different alliances, things of that nature that always have to be calculated in. But are there some broad lessons to be learned here that elsewhere on the issue spectrum could be emulated? What would you say?
You need to put the left on defense, and part of the way that you do that is to take control of the language. One way that I did it was, instead of calling it school choice, which is what I do with people I'm friendly with who already support it, but if you talk about it in terms of funding students, not systems, what does that do? Well, it gives you more transparency about what I'm talking about. The money follows the child. But if you want to argue with me, you're automatically on defense. You have to argue to fund the system and not the student. So it's a rhetorical technique that puts the other side on defense. And in politics, one of the quick rules is that if you're explaining, you're losing. And so I think I've turned it around on the other side. One of their main arguments is that school choice is going to defund public schools. A quick response to that is, why would giving families a choice defund public schools? Right. And that's it. That's the end of the conversation. They can't answer that without admitting they believe the public schools are failure factories that people want to leave. That's an argument to expand choice, not to trap kids in those same institutions that aren't working for them. And then also pointing out hypocrisy is very potent with voters. Joe Biden sent his kid to private schools. He went to private school, and then he fights against school choice for others. Senator Claire Searcy in Iowa went to private school and then fought against school choice last year as well. So these are, hypocrisy is very powerful as well, and it's very it happens a lot in the school choice debate. There's actually I think someone came up with DeAngelis's razor. It's the higher the probability that someone sent their kids to private school is associated with the more vociferous they are in attacking school choice. But so those are a couple of ways to replicate. But I think also, Steve, something that's important is this strikes at the root of the issue. The left almost didn't even have to have kids for a long time because they controlled the minds of other people's children in the government school system, and they could change the culture of our country and other policies through that socialist indoctrination in the school system. If we let families free and if we take back the school system, we should expect lower taxes in the future. We should expect more conservative policies in the future because there will be less brainwashing and people being churned through a system where they think that big government's the answer to all of their problems. So I think this is a way to fix those other problems, even if you don't get those done directly through policy. You also want to create proof of concept as well. With school choice, we had incremental reform at first, and we were able to point to examples like Florida, where the public schools actually got better. They didn't collapse like the doomsday predictions that are put forth by the left. So with pilot programs and other examples that you can point to, you can take away their arguments. And we live in 50 laboratories of democracy. So that makes it a lot more likely that you could do that with your policy as well.
All right, final thing I want to ask you about. Got about 2 minutes here. Since you use the language of revolution, let's harken back to our own, the American Revolution. What's Yorktown on this front? All right, we clearly have the momentum here. Okay, and to the point that I have arguments with my own audience at times who are like, well, why not just completely just free the whole thing? I mean, why do I even have to get a voucher from government or anything at all? Like, I mean, those are the arguments and conversations I want us to be able to have. Okay, but what's Yorktown here? What is first? The redcoats have to go before we have our own constitutional convention about what to do instead. Okay, so what's Yorktown here? What does that look like? What's the W, the ultimate W?
Well, so the W in the policy world that we live in is to have the money that belongs or is meant for educating each child to follow them to the school that works best for them. So this is already happening in states like Arizona and Iowa. So the money that would have followed you to the government school, you could still take it there if you want. If you like your public school, you can keep your public school for real this time, and like with your doctor. But if not, in Arizona, for example, it's about $7,000 in that state funding that you can take into something called an education savings account. You could use it to pay for private school tuition and fees or any other approved provider of the service. It could be for homeschool curriculum and so on and so forth. So that is the most feasible policy victory that I can see, and I would like it to expand to blue states as well. And the only way that's ever going to happen is if the teachers' unions lose their stranglehold on the Democrat Party. And I think the way that will happen is if the GOP leans into parental rights as a political winner and parents start to support them because of it, well, it becomes a political suicide for Democrats to oppose it. Look what happened with Terry McAuliffe in Virginia. And so it's not going to be because we convince the Democrats that it's an equalizer and that it's the right thing to do. It is, but that's not what's going to cause them to vote for it. We need to hit them where it hurts, at the ballot box. And the only way for that to happen is if the Republicans continue to lead on the issue. You'll see some Democrats defect. And if enough Democrats leave the Democrat Party and say, hey, I'm going to listen to my constituents and not these special interests, well, then they won't have as much control. The unions won't be able to control them anymore because they can primary one or two people who vote with the Republicans. But if all Democrats said to hell with this and voted their conscience and did the right thing and voted for school choice, well, the unions wouldn't have control over neither party. So it's almost like a coordination problem. But once they all band together, kind of like the parents did, the Democrats could break free from their control too.
Again, the name of the book, The Parent Revolution, Rescuing Your Kids from the Radicals Ruining Our Schools. Corey DeAngelis, always good to have you on the show, Corey. Congrats on the book, and wish you well with it, brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You bet. Brought to you by our friends over at Fast Growing Trees. Did you know they have the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants, over 2 million happy customers, by the way, as well. Everything you could possibly want, from fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, so much more. You might be thinking, I barely have a yard. I don't have a yard at all. You know, you can grow a lot of this stuff indoors, even lemon trees, avocado trees, olive, fig trees, all indoors. They'll show you how to do that with their 30-day Alive or Thrive guarantee. They'll also give you plant consultation free forever for the life of your of whatever it is that you purchase. You can't beat that. So if you want to give it a shot this spring, you want to brighten things up, liven things up, they've already got up to half off on select plants and other deals happening on their website. But you can get an additional 15% off your first purchase on top of whatever that sale is. An additional 15% off when you use the code DACE at checkout when you go to fastgrowingtrees.com. Again, use the code DACE at checkout for the additional discount on whatever's on sale there, or, full price, whichever you prefer. But take 15% off, and that's at fastgrowingtrees.com. Promo code DACE. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, Todd and Aaron, your thoughts on the conversation we just had with Corey DeAngelis.
It was a really good question to ask what general lessons can be applied elsewhere. And it turns out you and he both have the same answer in books you wrote. In Rules for Patriots, never accepting their language. This is what he's talking about. And more broadly speaking, be a critical thinker. This is both the blessing and the great frustration of this modern era. We don't need a miracle to win these. The wins are everywhere. It just takes the will, as you say all the time. That's the biggest problem. We don't have the will. Because once you simply apply, he didn't do some great dive of calculus. He just says, own the language. It's right there. Take it. We just don't want to take it too often. And from his lips to God's ears on what we can do to win both this issue and more broadly, all of the issues. It can happen before our children are punished.
Yeah, we often say, and it's been said in different ways, that a kind of a window into your soul, or kind of the window to your worldview, is where you stand on the life issue. A direct, one point of separation, outcropping of that is what you do with your own children's education and how involved you are in that. Mm-hmm. Because if they can't get them in the womb, they're going to try to get them as soon as they can afterwards. Yep. Just ask any new parent who has a recent awakening with what the medical system tries to do a few years down the line, what the schools try to do with their children. It is all enveloping, it seems like. So it's a pretty good window into your soul, a pretty good window into your worldview, what you do with your kids' education and the things and other tentacles that touches too. Yep.
Correct. I mean, that's why I didn't call it Satan's youth ministry all these years for nothing. And Corey tapped into that. I mean, they could just take our kids. They didn't have to have their own kids. They could just take our kids and reprogram them on our dime. And we've let them do that for a generation. So it's about time to, stop letting them do that.
Yes.
When we come back, we're going to tell you about a film that you must see, but it will infuriate you next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Although we hope not all at once, can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Email the show, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, we and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. And then also, if you listen to the podcast, thank you so much. You're a big part of this show's success. If you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review, only if you like us. I mean, we would never ask you to lie. And you may think, well, I think the show's okay. Well, we would ask you to exaggerate. We're okay with that. Our conscience is totally fine with it. We would not want you to bear false witness, but we're totally fine with you embellishing your level of love for the show. So leave us more 5-star reviews. Also, you can hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow. And that way, every time we do a new episode, it will show up in your feed every single time. And we thank each and every one of you that have done those things for us. Also want to thank our friends over at Relief Factor for sponsoring this part of the show. And if you're one of those people thinking it will be my lot in life to suffer from this chronic pain, no matter what I do from this time forward, I mean, it might be. I'm not going to promise you it's 100%. It's not. But over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start for Relief Factor. And over the years, right around 70% of them have decided, wow, these results are so good, I'm sticking around long term. Now, how does it work? Well, Relief Factor is a supplement created by physicians, drug-free, created by physicians who can prescribe drugs, but they were concerned about the side effects of these drugs, and they were tired of just treating the symptoms. They wanted to go after the inflammation in your joints that's the likely culprit causing your chronic pain. And that's what this supplement seeks to do. We can't guarantee it'll work for you, but the odds are pretty good you're going to feel at least some relief in 3 weeks or less. Put them to the test. It's only $20 to find out at relieffactor.com. Again, get the 3-week quick start at relieffactor.com. Last week, I had the opportunity to preview a film that is both very compelling and extremely infuriating. Here's a preview.
Antifa! Antifa! Let me through, I got a knife.
We have not to date seen any evidence of anarchist violent extremists or people subscribing to Antifa in connection with the 6th.
It's not protest, it's insurrection.
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 2 small squads of military trained guys could have wiped out the entire House and Senate that day had there been a real insurrection.
I think that law enforcement has been weaponized.
This guy is not just undercover, okay? He is committing violence.
Everybody that was on the ground on J 6, police officers and demonstrators alike, were all set up.
They have this mystery story that we're some kind of domestic terrorist group.
Why are you going to prison for 8 months?
For my documentation of January 6th. They're being punished as criminals.
When the United States government comes at you with everything they have, it can be very intimidating.
They're trying to instill fear.
This is intimidation, just like the Gestapo.
This was not a no-knock warrant. I could have killed somebody because they didn't identify themselves.
The Capitol Police were coming after me. They conducted a criminal investigation on me because of my position on January 6th.
I was paid to pretend to protest.
For 3 years, the federal government has waged a war on truth.
On May 17th, the truth fights back.
The mastermind behind this film, which you must see when it comes out on May 17th, joins us now. Nick Searcy is here with us on The Blaze. Nick, it's an honor to have you with us, brother. How are you?
Steve, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. And, you know, my involvement in this story goes back within the first few weeks. Really, for me, it started with Ashley Babbitt. And
right.
And the part of her story that at the time bothered me the most is the fact that the video of her murder was captured by a guy who admitted he was an Antifa member. And I think he was from Utah, if memory serves. Okay, so there are conservatively tens of thousands of people in the Capitol complex that day. All right, conservatively, what are the odds that one guy traveling from 2,000 plus miles away in Utah, who just so happens to be self-confessed Antifa, happens to be in the perfect position to capture the murder of Ashley Babbitt? I mean, the odds of that are about the odds of bats flying 900 kilometers and diving into wet markets in Wuhan to create a virus, about those kinds of odds. And so, you know, little by little, talking to people like Julie Kelly and others that we were platforming earlier, just asking questions that I thought needed to get some answers. And what really woke me up the most about this is during the years of COVID, man, I got banned on every platform for going after the data. I mean, we got shunned. I still can't have really a YouTube account. It's a joke, my YouTube account. They'll never let me back, really. But yet I never got into the fact checker crosshairs until one day we had on one of the January 6thers from federal prison. And that was finally, of all the stuff I've done to go after the regime narratives, this was the untouchable, was this subject. And talking to one of the guys who was in prison, and now suddenly the Blaze is getting contacted by fact checkers and everybody else on my behalf. And that kind of showed me, this is really the fourth rail, this issue. And that's basically what your film is about, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why we call it the war on truth, because they cannot let the truth about January 6th be told. And that's why they come after you or anybody else that tries to give these people that are being persecuted for their political actions, their political beliefs, that gives them power to do that. And so they cannot allow the actual truth of the event to be heard.
What happened there, Nick? And do we know? Will we ever know? There's clearly video of people acting poorly, if not criminally. Yeah. There's clearly some people that deserve to be charged with something. Okay, don't you think?
No, I don't.
You don't?
Because
okay.
No, I don't. Because I believe that what happened, all of the stuff that we pulled together shows that most of the violence was done by people that were there. Their intention was to cause violence. They were not sincere Trump supporters. And the one thing that everybody seems to forget or never mentions about this story is that the process that was going on in the Capitol building at the time the breach of the Capitol occurred was exactly what the people who went to Washington to protest wanted to go on. They were challenging the vote. Ted Cruz had stood up and challenged the vote. They were going to send the vote back to the states for 10 days to verify it. That's exactly what everybody that was there outside wanted to have happen. The only people that wanted that process to stop were the Nancy Pelosi crowd and the people who wanted the election to just be certified and all these questions about the election to just go away. So that explains why the police, mysteriously allowed people to just walk into the building. We have Tarek Johnson talking about how he tried to communicate to his superiors. Tarek Johnson was a Capitol policeman that day, tried to tell them they needed to clear the House and Senate because if the people that had come in the Capitol had somehow wandered into that chamber, there would have been a bloodbath. And he never got an answer or an okay from his superiors. And he, on his own volition, he cleared the House and Senate, and by that action probably saved hundreds of lives, because what they wanted to have happen that day was something much worse than what actually did. I think they wanted bodies because they were the ones trying to disrupt the official proceeding of challenging the vote that was going on in the Capitol building.
Tell us about Harry Dunn. This is somebody that our colleague Steve Baker has spent a good amount of time talking about here on this. And he's now become party to this by daring to actually just report on what happened. And he's in and out of federal court buildings and everything else right now as a result of that. All right. But this guy's actually running for Congress now. Now, Baker says he's a liar, fraud, and a stealer of valor. I pushed back on my colleague and said, well, you're actually showing that he's very qualified to be a member of Congress, but that's probably not your intention, okay? But he is just one of the many mysterious, curious figures in this entire story.
Yes, and, Harry Dunn he's being rewarded for lying. And this is how the left mob operates. If you do their bidding, they then try to reward you because they know that you are a useful, compliant soldier, and they try to put you in positions of more power. This is the way it works. And that's why liars are rewarded and the truth is suppressed. And that's what happens in a totalitarian society, which is exactly what they're trying to create. They're trying to create America as a one-party ruled state. They're trying to destroy America as founded and replace it with something more in line with their beliefs. I mean, as Obama said when he took office, we are here to fundamentally transform the United States of America. And what's the first thing you do when you remodel a house, you fundamentally transform it? What's the first thing you do? You tear it down. So that's what they're doing right now. That's what all this is about.
Whatever happened to that pipe bomb, Nick? Because that would seem to be the best evidence of insurrection that was provided, frankly, would be an act of clear domestic terrorism. So whatever happened with that?
Well, to me, it's obvious that was a phony, that was false, that was a government operation, or else they would reveal who it was. I mean, they can catch a grandmother who stuck her head in the chamber. They can identify her with cell phones and facial recognition software, whatever, but they can't find the lone person sitting on a bench who they know put the pipe bomb there. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. What happened with Ray Epps has been much discussed. Mm-hmm. But what happened with Ray Epps? There he is on tape. We have to go into the Capitol building. Everybody around him, when he's screaming this, is going, fed, 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 because there's no reason to go into the Capitol building. They wanted what was happening in the Capitol building to go on. I can't emphasize that enough. It's ridiculous to think that the people who were there to protest an election would want to stop the protesting of the election officially inside the House.
Nick Searcy is here with us, the producer of a very compelling and even more infuriating film called The War on Truth. It's out on May the 17th. Let's get to the heart of the movie, and I think this is where I think your movie, Nick, really soars, because it's the stories of what's happened to the people individually, the personal testimonies of the people whose lives have been destroyed, are still being destroyed. I mean, I let off the show today with an email from a listener whose uncle and father are two of the individuals that are being convicted via the FACE Act today in Virginia, and looking at maybe years in prison for, silently protesting basically a serial killer, infanticide. Right. So different issue, but the exact same impulses that you are describing here on the January 6th front. OK. And I think when we hear the stories of those who are in the midst of this being persecuted, these are very powerful tales, because they also make you wrestle with, even if you think the worst of the worst is what happened there, is the juice really worth the squeeze of what we're doing to these people years later? So why did you choose to go down that front rather than just do another expose on the events? Why bring the personal angle into this?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because to me, that was the whole point of the movie. I wanted to humanize these people that the government and the media and Joe Biden and all of his stooges and all of his cohorts have been demonizing for 3 years, because these are decent, wonderful, normal people. Most of them, by and large, it's a majority of them are Christian people who have never been arrested for anything before in their lives. These are your friends and neighbors that you would trust with your pets while you were away or something. I mean, these are not criminals, and the way they're being treated by the FBI and the DOJ, they're being classified as potential domestic terrorists. The SWAT teams are knocking down their doors at 6 a.m. They're being humiliated in front of their neighbors. The media is calling them insurrectionists. They're losing their businesses. They're losing their families in many places. I mean, it's horrific what they're doing. And this is all intentional, Steve. This is all meant not only to punish these people, but to send a message. Mm-hmm. Don't ever protest anything that we do ever again, because this is how we treat you. If you do this, you're going to wind up like these people. And so that was to me, that was the heart of the matter. I wanted to tell these people stories, because the media would not. In every case I talked to these people, has anyone from the media ever come to you and allowed you to tell the truth of what happened to you that day? And every one of them says, no, I was written about, but I was never talked to. They wrote all this stuff about me, parroting what the government said about me, but no one ever came and asked me anything. Maybe the most, at least for me personally, the most bile-inducing part of your movie, the story that just makes you want to scream out Lexington and Concord, at least for me, is you tell the story of the family who essentially, I mean, this is just right out of the brown shirt, hammer and sickle playbook, basically, that they turned their oldest son against the family, so that he is testifying now against his father. Throw in all the social media. Now, of course, he's getting adulation from the social media crowd as being, he's on the vanguard. He's among the enlightened, And throughout history, it's usually not the people turning their parents in that are usually on the side of right, by the way, for those of you that have never read a history book. They're usually the bad guys, okay? But to then hear this mother's anguish as her husband's in prison and her son was used to put him there, and she's on one hand wants to hug her son, on the other hand she is betrayed and heartbroken at a existential level. Even recounting right now, saying out loud, watching that was gut-wrenching for me all over again, and just made me grit my teeth, frankly, watching that. Yes, it's a terrible, terrible story. And, this was months in the making. I mean, they had been communicating with her son. The FBI had been communicating with him online and getting him to record his father saying things that they could then use against him in court. I mean, and this is like historically very significant. I mean, there's a famous story out of the Soviet Union about a little boy in a village who turned his father in for saying that Stalin had a big nose or something. And they executed his father and then carried this little 9-10-year-old boy around like, had him go speak at rallies like he was some sort of hero, some sort of savior of the regime for turning in his family. But this is what communists do. They split up families. They turn families against each other. They turn people against each other. And that's what's going on. I mean, we are in the midst of a takeover by sinister forces within our country.
The crescendo of your movie, not to give everything away, so slap me around if I'm doing that, okay? But
it's great to talk to somebody who's actually seen the movie. Most of the people I talk to haven't watched it yet, so it's great.
The crescendo of your film is you tell the story of a young married couple that are very devout in their faith. And it's clear that this movie is what you took months making this, because you're following the evolution of what's happening to their family as they are preparing their daughters for daddy going away. At the end of the film, or one of the things you see at the end of the film is mom driving him in to be checked in and incarcerated, and then the aftermath with her, and I mean his faith, man, is just incredible. It's just badass. He's like, I guess there's some people here God must want me to minister to, so this is where I'm going, like a mission trip, for the next, what was it? I think it was like a 12 months or 18 months or something like that. And now, you read where these people are afterwards, and he now works full time, literally in mission work. Okay. Yeah. But to watch that story and to watch that family, I just thought very powerful.
Yes, JD was one of the first. I think he was actually the first person we interviewed, because I heard what was happening to him, and I'd known JD a little bit just from talking to him online. And yeah, that story, he's so typical. There's so many of these guys. Colton Maccabee, again, who's profiled in the film. He looks at it as a mission. And JD looks at it as a mission, and the faith of these people, I mean, it really is, it stirs your heart. I mean, it made me want to be a better person, made me want to be a better Christian. And I look at these people now, I wonder, could I do what he's doing? Would I have that kind of courage? Is my faith as strong as his is? Because it is amazing and heartening. Actually, that's the thing about the movie. As bad as it is, people like J.D. Rivera and Colton Maccabee and John Strand and all these people, they give you hope, because you look at the courage that they have in facing down this horrible evil. And in many cases, John Strand and Colton Maccabee said, I am not going to take a plea deal. I will face the consequences. And so they go to jail for years. For when people who did the exact same thing as they did, who took the plea deal, and you can't blame them, but they go to jail for a few months and then they're out. But these people standing on truth, standing on their faith, are displaying the courage that it takes to stand up to this kind of what I consider to be pure evil.
For you personally, the making of this, Nick, what was the big takeaway for you?
I guess the big takeaway for me is that it's really hard to make yourself believe that our government, the American government, is behaving this way, but it is. And that was, to me, the reason why it was so important to finish this film. This was a very difficult movie to complete. It took 18 months when we thought it was going to take 7, because the story kept evolving, and it continues to evolve to this day. That's the thing people need to realize. They have not stopped arresting people for January 6th. They have arrested more people in 2024 in the first 4 or 5 months of 2024 than they arrested all year last year. And they are continuing to do this. They're ramping it up as it comes closer to the election, because the whole point of the January 6th setup was to affect the election, to make sure that nobody, no outsider, nobody that was not part of the establishment government ever got to the levers of power again. They could not risk that. So this whole populist movement, this whole movement that's sweeping the country has to be crushed, because they are the ruling class and they want one of theirs in position to keep the ruling class in power. So does that answer your question? I got lost in my own.
No, that's a very good answer. It's a very good film. I definitely think our audience needs to see it. How can they do so when it comes out here in a few days?
It's at the warontruthmovie.com. It has its own website designated just for that. thewarontruthmovie.com, but it's also at the Salem Now website. It'll be released on Salem Now Friday, May 17th.
All right, so Salem Now on Friday, or make sure the is in there, thewarontruth.com, or no, thewarontruthmovie.com, correct?
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly.
All right, thewarontruthmovie.com. Again, remember this, thewarontruthmovie.com, or you can also get it at Salem Now on demand on Friday. I highly recommend everybody see this film, but I also you don't already be in a bad mood. Like don't watch it after the dog has an accident on your new floors. Not that happened to me recently. All right, don't do that. Okay, don't, because this isn't going to put you in a good place. All right, and so if you're already ornery, you might want to wait a day or give it an hour. Okay, but I think every patriot needs to see your film, Nick. It's extremely well done.
Thank you. And this film is really a sequel to Capital Punishment, which is the film I released in 2021. Capital Punishment is up now on Rumble for free. So I suggest going and watching that one first, because we continue the story of some of those people. And also, Capital Punishment will put you in a little bit better mood. There's a few jokes in Capital Punishment. I cut all the jokes out of The War on Truth. I said, okay, this isn't funny anymore.
Right. All right. Great work, man. God bless you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Nick, for the time.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it.
You bet. Brought to you by our friends over at Eden Pure. They are back with their famous Thunderstorm air purifier. It's their top-selling unit because it quickly destroys the actual components causing the nasty air in your home or your office, garage, etc. It's not an air freshener, it's a purifier. So it goes right after the mold, the mildews, the bacteria, even some of the viruses that are responsible for that air that you want to get rid of, whether that's cigarette smoke, trash cans, litter boxes, dirty diapers, teenagers with hormones and are very sweaty after doing 2-a-days during football season in 100-degree heat. Again, not that I have any personal experience with that. All right, it gets rid of all of those smells for you. Nothing can hide from the Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier. And now you can save $200 on a 3-pack for whole home protection. 3 units for under $200. Put one in your basement, bedroom, family room, kitchen, wherever. Again, take advantage of this with the discount code STEVE3 when you go to EdenPureDeals.com. That's EdenPureDeals.com. Use the discount code STEVE3. STEVE3 is the discount code at EdenPureDeals.com. Well, I wanted to make sure we set aside here for this week's Pop Culture Tuesday segment, where we look at the intersection between what's trending in pop culture and what we're trying to conserve as conservatives. And I think this film is right at the epicenter of that. Highly, highly, highly recommend everybody sees it. Got just a taste of it here as we were discussing it with its producer and narrator, Nick Searcy. So I wanted to make sure, gentlemen, there was plenty of time for your thoughts and comments here. We got a good 5 minutes. What do you think?
If I end up voting for Donald Trump for president of the United States, it'll be because what I'm thinking about and feeling after this interview, and I haven't seen the movie yet, just this interview will be top of mind. So Donald Trump, note to self, these are the things you need to impress the American people on in the time between now and then. Give Nick Searcy a call, or on the transgender issue, give the people leading that front. On the COVID issue, on that front, you have to connect all of us again to the fact that you are really fighting for us and not just yourself at this moment. That's the disconnect that I'm wondering about all the time. Are you doing this for us at all anymore? It's all right there. Connect with us again on all of these issues, and we will go to war for you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know whether it's whether it's in your schools, as we talked with Corey about, or whether it's something like this where your government, it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, as Nick said there. There's a lot of opposition. It seems like it is everywhere right now. Now's the time to fight. Just hearkening back to Harrison Butker's words there, and I just want to reset them. It wasn't a platform he expected to have to be on a 3-time Super Bowl winning team. And the accolades, and again, the platform that provides you. He did not expect that, but that was the one that God gave him. He's recognized that. And what did he say? He said, I'm here to spit hard truths, to accept and embrace my lane and stay in it. Everybody has a lane. You might be tempted to think, hey, to gravitate towards the end of that, stay in your lane. No, too many people have not embraced their lane. Too many people try to reject their lane. Too many people live to escape instead of escaping to live. That's what Todd talks about all of the time. Almost gets on my nerves all of the time with soap operas for men and lightsaber duels and things like that. But that's what he's talking about. It's time to fight. Everybody has a lane. Embrace it.
It's, I'm telling you, I'm not doing the movie justice even talking about it, because what Nick does very well in this movie is let these people tell their own stories, and doesn't even facilitate the conversations, just allows his own platform to be a platform for them and say, hey, tell me your story. And their stories are very potent and beg a lot of questions. And I think of, and we've cited this verse many times, but it's, Solomon writes in Hebrews, one side of the story seems true until another comes forth and you hear the other side, right? The part you heard Nick say in this interview, when he kept asking these people over and over again, any media contact you? The idea of we're going to put political prisoners in prison without giving them a voice or to hear their side. Guys, I'm just telling you, and man, I'm going to tell you right now, the interview that I am going to remember and cite the rest of this year is the one we did with John Daniel Davidson a few weeks ago about his book. I think it's called Pagan America. Mm-hmm. And because you guys, I've said, hey, this is a post-Christian era, but I think I love what John did. He took my point, though, to its most logical conclusion, that America will become evil. Without revival, it'll be evil. It's never the good guys in history, folks, who turn children against their parents. That's never the good guys. It's never the good guys who put political dissidents in prison without hearing what they have to say. That's never the good guys, no matter what banner, iconography they're under, what their slogans are. The good guys never do those things, I promise you. Idolatry or Not, brought to you by our friends over at Fume. Have you ever tried breaking that bad habit? Felt like you were climbing Mount Everest? And in flip-flops, no less? Yeah, it's a hard habit to break, as the song says, but here's a breath of fresh air. It's called Fume. F-U-M, M as in mercy. It's not about giving up. It's about switching it up. Fume takes your habit and simply makes it better, healthier, and a whole lot more enjoyable. So instead of vapor, you use flavored air. Instead of electronics, it's completely natural. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses delicious flavors. It's a habit now you're free to enjoy and makes replacing that bad habit easier. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial. It's designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for distressing and anxiety when breaking your bad habit. So Fume has served over 300,000 customers. You could be their next success story. For a limited time, use my code Steve to get a free gift with your journey pack when you head to tryfume.com. Tryfume, F-U-M, F-U-M, tryfume.com. Use the discount code Steve to get a free gift with your order today. That's tryfume.com, discount code Steve. And let us now embark upon, in our final segment, some idolatry or not. Okay? This is for those of you that still believe this is an important election to win this year. I still do, by the way. I've not changed my position on that. I've just decided, I've just given up wasting any more time holding the flame where that's concerned, given how ridiculous much of the election talk was. Like, if we were doing this stuff Nick Searcy was talking about a segment ago, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'd be way more obnoxious, okay? If we were having on a regular basis, and if the campaign was being used as a platform by which to have the conversations we just had with Nick Searcy, I would be beyond obnoxious that we have to win.
The whole point.
Okay?
But
we're not. We're not. You know, the whole damn thing's just beyond ridiculous, and I just can't sit there anymore and just keep beating my head against a wall for whatevs. Okay? But that doesn't mean I've changed my position on what I think needs to happen on November the 5th. And to that end, this is not a poll, what I'm about to show you. This is a total banana in the tailpipe. Absolute psyop. And we're walking right into it. And I recognize it because I walked right into this in the last cycle we had in 2022. Man, I was eating this stuff up. I couldn't get enough. Todd was like, I thought we were done doing poll of the day broadcasting. Nope, not in 2022, brother. I couldn't get enough. It was all polls all the time. All right? Feed me more. I need those empty calories. I was going back and back and back again to Vendo Land, putting another buck in there, clicking on poll. Give me that for a snack. Show up with the big Tubbo corn and the Tiger Woods red shirt at the Blaze Studios. You guys remember how excited I was to get on that plane and head down to do that show? Do you guys remember?
I do.
I even posed right before the show started with the Christopher Reeve Superman suit that Glenn has as part of his Americana Museum collection. That is, that is a sacred relic to me, okay?
I do.
That is how confident I was that this was going to be good. Within an hour, Michael Malice and Jason Whitlock have nearly gone Boys in the Hood. Okay, I am just increasingly becoming incensed watching returns. All right, I think Glenn Beck probably hates me now. The whole thing went sideways. Okay, I've never recovered. Okay, so I say that to mean I could be overreacting. Fair. That is possible, okay? But man, this math don't add up. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. So maybe you turned into your favorite conservative show, Not Named Us, yesterday, and man, it was just almost orgasmic at this Siena New York Times poll of Trump just surging in these red states, all right? So I decided, for old time's sake, I could owe $10 here to the poll jar. All right. I decided for old time's sake to look at the polls, particularly this one. Decided to look at its cross tabs and what it had to say. And I picked 3 battleground states in particular. Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, all states that would have Trump, that it currently has Trump winning, and he would win the presidency if he did. It would be impossible for Trump to get to 270 without winning at least one of them. It's darn difficult for him to get there without winning 2. All right. So I want to show you guys what I found inside the crosstabs of this poll that we were all celebrating yesterday. Let's start with Nevada. This poll claims that Trump is winning women there by 9 when he lost them by 10 in 2020. By the way, if this is true that Trump is doing so well with women, why are we caving on abortion then? Do you know why? If he's winning women so substantially, why are we caving on abortion now?
Trying to women harder.
Okay. That doesn't make any sense. Claims that Trump is winning men there by 18 when he won them by only 5 in 2020. And it claims Trump is winning Hispanics there by 11 when he lost them by 26 in 2020. That's the basis for why they have Trump ahead in Nevada. Let's go next to Pennsylvania. Claims Trump is only losing women there by 3 when he lost them by 11 in 2020. Again, I ask, if we're doing so well with women, why are we caving on abortion? Anybody? Is this on? McFly? Anybody? If we're doing so well with women, why are we caving on this? Anybody know? Todd, you got something for me? Anything?
Fetterman surge.
Okay, thank you. Claims Trump is ahead there despite being 5 points worse with whites than he did in 2020. Guys, I'm telling you, there's no way Donald Trump is winning Pennsylvania by performing worse with whites than he did the last time he ran. That ain't happening, okay? Claims Biden, you're going to love this one, claims Biden is only getting 44% of the Philadelphia vote when he received 81% of it in 2020. To quote your former baseball announcer, just a bit outside, and is giving Biden only 50% of the black vote there when he received 92% of it in 2020. That's going to be a no from me, dog. Okay? Let's go next to Wisconsin, Todd.
Brothers be flipping, Steve.
Yeah, no. Not at that rate. They're not. Okay? Claims in the release that Trump is ahead there by 1, but when you actually look at the crosstabs, when it asks people to say you're no longer undecided and you have to make a decision today, whom would you choose? Biden actually goes ahead by 2. Claims Biden will only win women there by 6 when he won them by 13 in 2020. And again, I ask, if this is so true that we're doing so well with women, why are we caving on abortion? Does anybody know the answer to this question? Can anybody tell me, point me to the take off your mask long enough to explain to me why, if we're doing so well with women, we are caving on abortion? Anybody?
Does that have anything to do with the question, what is a woman, Steve?
I have no idea. Claims Trump is ahead in Wisconsin, but get this. He's getting less white voters than he received in 2020. He is losing suburban voters by 8 when he won them by 12 in 2020. And he's getting 0% of the black vote. But 14% of blacks in Wisconsin are going to vote for Jill Stein over Biden. Come on, man. So here's what this all means. Trump's strong performance in the top line of this poll is contrary to the crosstabs that show him often underperforming where he was in 2020 and almost exclusively results from Biden's underperformance with core constituencies of the Democratic Party, blacks, Hispanics, and some demos of women. In other words, for this poll to be fulfilled 25 weeks from today is Election Day, 25 weeks from today. For this poll to be fulfilled 25 weeks from today would require Biden, now get this, he would have to perform worse with women than any Democrat since 1984, worse with blacks than any Democrat since 1956, and worse with Hispanics than any Democrat ever. I don't believe this poll is a realistic path to victory. We all know Democrats will, let's go with fortify. You guys like that word? I think that we all know Democrats are going to fortify their results with these demos come election day, election week, election month, election festival, election until we win, whatever we want to call it these days. Now, I think Trump could win, but it's not going to look like this. Because that would mean we're in an environment where Democrats were also looking at least a 40-seat loss in the House for this to happen. For this level of collapse amongst these core demographics, you're looking at least a 40-seat loss in the House. And I can just tell you, no one believes that. I know members of Congress I know or are friends of mine, even behind closed doors, they all believe they're losing the House, let alone a 40-seat kind of a sweeping majority mandate. At best, this poll is problematic. At worst, it's a psyop. And by the way, that's what it is. It's not the best. It's not the best. It's the worst. I'll just go ahead. I'm not even going to ask you guys at the best. I'll answer that for you. It's the worst. It's the worst. It's a psyop. To convince you, why? To what end, Steve? Stay drunk and on that numbing overconfidence? You don't need to volunteer. You can, dude, head over to the casino. You've got another full pocket of pennies just waiting to be dumped into penny slots to smoke indoors, the one place left in America where you still can. Stop at the gas station, grab a carton of them lung darts, take that full pocket of pennies with you to the casino. You don't need to volunteer. You don't need to door knock. You don't need to register people. You don't need to do any of that. Go home at night, fire up the grill. Jesse Shallow Waters will convince you yet again, Trump's got this. That's what they're doing here. 100%. 100% that's what this is. Don't do the hard work of matching the Democrats' ballot harvesting scheme. Just keep it convenient, man. Stay comfortable. Stay comfy, folks. That's what this is about. Now, I want to get you guys' take on this after we talk about our friends over at My Patriot Supply. Another day, another breaking news story buried. They'd rather talk about anything else other than what's really going on. It's not because they don't know what's happening. It's because they don't want you to pay attention to it. So you got to look behind the headlines sometimes. And you can tell, like we just had the conversation with Nick Searcy, when the truth is being covered up. That's why you want to make sure you are prepared for what will come your way with My Patriot Supply. Since 2008, My Patriot Supply has helped millions of Americans prep for the worst. Today, their best-selling 3-month emergency food kits are flying off the shelves. You can get yours right now at my website, preparewithdace.com. This food kit offers over 2,000 plus calories per day. Plus, with ultra-durable 4-layer packaging, it lasts up to 25 years in storage. Order all the kits you need for $200 off each. Free shipping is included. Free shipping is included. You've been warned about what can happen. Don't live in fear. Take back control of your future, because this isn't just food now. It's peace of mind, maybe even freedom. So stock up on these food kits at preparewithdace.com. That's preparewithdace.com. All right, Todd and Aaron, what say you?
So Ben is 2.5 years old. He's a toddler. He's gotten onto this kick in the last few months of, instead of asking for something directly, he asks questions that he wants us as the parents to ask him. and if you spend,
they're not supposed to start doing that yet, by the way.
If you spend any amount of time around him while he gets on these kicks, you would think that all we fed him was candy. Do you want a sucker? Do you want a cookie? Do you want an M&M? Do you want to fill in the blank with every single thing? Do you want to go to Wacoon River Park? That type of thing over and over again. He wants us to ask the question that he wants to be asked.
Smart. Very smart.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I think these polls are. That's how I think most people treat these polls, at least from what I've seen. Is Donald Trump going to win Nevada by 13 points? Do you want a sucker? Is Donald Trump going to win Arizona by 8 points? Do you want a cookie?
What a great analogy.
Is Donald Trump going to win Wisconsin? Is Donald Trump going to get, Joe Biden only going to win 50% of blacks in Pennsylvania? You want to go to Wacoon River Park? One day, though, Ben got his signals crossed. And it was the day after we brought Abby home from the hospital. And he was really excited the night before. And so I went into his bedroom to wake him up in the morning. And I said, "Good morning, Ben. How are you?" And he didn't even say anything to me. Without skipping a beat, he looked at me and said, "Do you want a poopy diaper?" And I said, "It sounds like I don't have much of a choice." I feel like a lot of people are asking the questions of these polls that they want to be told or they want to be asked.
That is phenomenal.
And we're going to be waking up on November 4th or 5th or 6th, whatever it is.
If you listen
asking ourselves, do we have a poopy diaper?
Yes.
That's exactly what I feel like. I hope not, but I feel like is happening here.
We went from stay home, save lives to stay home, win the election, Todd. Stay home. You got this. It's all good. Stay home.
Well, I'm very used to this being a psyop on our side. And again, your 2022, I had that experience in the Iowa caucuses here recently, 2-to-1 ratio evangelicals for Trump, and then you coming off the top rope. Oh, it's worse than that. They don't even show up at all. So yeah, I get that. But we really haven't entertained, and is this as much a psyop on Democrat voters as well? Because you could, the top line saying that Trump's going to win. Well, why doesn't it incentivize voters, or Biden voters at all when they look at possibly dire results? Mm-hmm. Is that just too depressing to them? Is the left worried that they'll just stay home? So are they being? I'm so bored about our side sucking. I'm asking a different question. Is this also a psyop on the left?
Of course it works both ways. But this, you know what? I'll never forget election night 2012 when your two predecessors, Jen and Rebecca, had you guys' seats. And I was working as a quasi-contributor to MSNBC at the time, and I thought it would be fascinating if all three of us watched a different cable news network leading up to election night coverage, right? And so I took bit the bullet and did MSNBC. Since I was contributing there, I thought I'll subject myself to that insane asylum. And then we were like, let's not communicate with each other the entire time. and then we'll come in because that was when we were still a nighttime show on Salem. We'll come in as the returns start coming in live, and we'll open the show with our impressions, okay, and without knowing what the other group's going to say. And this is before CNN had gone nuts, okay. And so Rebecca had watched CNN, and they were basically just going over numbers. It's too close to call in a lot of these places. Going to be a long night, okay. And MSNBC, which I watched, was all like, "Hey, you owe Obama. He delivered for you. Get out and vote for him. He did this, and this. He checked this box. Okay, he did transform the country. You should do that." Fox News was all just like, "Romney's already won. It's over. Don't worry about it. No, he's got this." And just the way the ecosystems of the bases were fed could not be any different. Nothing's changed. All right, so because you're right, the PSYOP works the other way too. I mean, there are people are going to be like, "Oh, we were at max lit already. What's max lit now? What's ultra max lit? Okay, what is that? What's nuclear max? We're hit like Danny DeVito and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Hit me. Okay, more crying, more wailing, more gnashing of teeth. We need more and more and more." That's how they'll receive that. Okay, our people would receive that as, it's all good. Why even paying attention? You know, this is just fun now. We're just riding this out for the next 6 months. It's a numbing agent. And that fit because they know that's the default setting many of our people want, is to be numbed. And they know that. So they're trying to numb you out. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Romans 8:28.